Salam students, and welcome back to this session. Today we will be doing the revision of Moments, that's your supplementary reader. We'll begin with lesson 2, that is the Adventures of Toto. Now first we'll just understand the author. Who is the author of this particular lesson, this story? Ruskin Bond. The theme of the story is about a mischievous pet monkey named Toto and all the nuisance that this particular monkey caused in the house of the author. Okay, the main characters of this story revolves around Toto, that is the mischievous pet monkey, and the grandfather. What do we get by reading this story, or what we understand by the story is that the grandfather's loving nature teaches us to be loving and caring towards animals. So what were the things that grandfather did for the monkey and how the monkey behaved at his place is what will be taken care of in this story. So now quickly, this is the main moral. It's that you could see the grandfather is a person who has very loving nature. He's very patient and also loves animals wholeheartedly. Okay, it teaches us that we should love nature and its creatures and not to harm them at all. He was so loving towards Toto that he could never part with him anywhere he went. So he used to take Toto along wherever he went. It shows that not animals can adapt to human way of life. Okay? It shows that animals generally find it very difficult to get along according to the human ways, the ways humans behave. Okay? It requires great deal of patience and skill to train these animals to acquire non-destructive behavior. That is why when you have pets at home, it is very important that we train them according to the needs of that particular house where the pets are being brought up. Okay. So children, now quickly we will understand the entire chapter, the value points, the important things that we need to remember when we are learning this particular lesson. So it's a pretty monkey named Toto, which was brought by the narrator's grandfather for ₹5 from a Tonga driver and brought home to be kept in his private zoo. He had lot of other animals in his private zoo and Toto was added to that. As Toto was mischievous, he had to be kept separate from the other animals. So he was really mischievous, naughty, playing a lot of pranks, so had to be kept separately. When the grandfather visited Saharanpur for some work, he carried Toto with him in the train, concealed in a bag. Okay, you know, he was packed up in the bag which he carried, and he was caught at Saharanpur by the ticket collector when grandfather was going out of the station, and so his fare had to be paid. Okay, he was thought of as a dog instead of a monkey out there, and he had to be paid. The fare of the monkey also had to be paid by the grandfather. He was accepted by grandfather and Toto was put in the stable with Nana the donkey. Grandmother never accepted Toto, or she was a little hesitant to keep animals at home. But however, gradually she accepted Toto and Toto was put in the stable with Nana, that is the donkey. But they were never good companions. Okay? As you read through the chapter, you will understand what type of behaviors they used to have or how they used to behave with each other. During winter, Toto bathed with warm water and also soaked himself as he had seen the narrator doing. So he used to take bath in real warm water and he used to follow whatever the narrator was doing, the author was doing. However, Toto once nearly boiled himself alive by climbing into the tea kettle for bathing while the kettle was on the stove for making tea. Okay, so this was one of the pranks he had played wherein he literally had boiled himself. He saw that the water was boiling in the kettle and he thought that it was a water kept for having a bath. So he just got into that kettle and found that it was getting hotter and hotter and he was almost going to die. Okay, at that point the grandmother noticed and he was taken out of the kettle. Toto continued his antics by tearing clothes, breaking plates, other utensils, etc. So anybody who came home for food, for dinner, Toto used to create lot of trouble out there, throwing away the plates. He had thrown away the plate of pulao once when a relative had visited the author. So this was the kind of behavior that Toto had. Okay, and it's very difficult to train animals for behaving in the right way. Finally, grandfather realized that Toto was not the type of pet to be kept in the house. He found the Tonga driver and sold Toto back to him for 3 rupees. So finally, they could not control his behavior at all. And grandfather finally realized that it was very difficult to keep Toto as a pet in a house. It's really difficult with this kind of a behavior. So from whom he had bought Toto for 5 rupees, he sold it back to the same Tonga driver for just 3 rupees. So when you have pets at home, you need to be really patient, alert, and must be able to train them according to the needs of the family. Only then should you keep a pet at home. That is what this story teaches us. And also the love for all creatures, all living creatures of this earth. Okay, so this is the chapter. So students, go through the lesson carefully, each and every part. Okay, questions from any part of the textbook from the chapter can be asked. Now, let's now just revise through this lesson 4 in the Kingdom of Fools. Okay, so this is written by A.K. Ramanujan. The theme of this story is that wherein a king and his minister in a particular kingdom were brainless and the people's life was in danger in this particular kingdom. So here there was this guru and his disciple who had visited this kingdom, and it was because of the guru's wisdom the city was saved. So the main characters revolve around the king, the minister, the guru, and the disciple. The moral or the message that is conveyed through this particular story is that we need to stay away from foolish people. And to tackle them, we need to employ wisdom. Wisely, we have to tackle these foolish people. So it says, one should stay away from foolish people, otherwise one is bound to suffer. In order to tackle these foolish people, one should employ wisdom and not logic. You need to use your intellect wisely, not logical thinking when dealing with foolish people. The guru does not argue or reason the innocence of his disciple. Rather, he flatters the king and manages to convince him that the new steak was lucky. Like we read through the chapter, how the guru had actually, with his wisdom, tried to convince the king, and how he had created a situation wherein the king was convinced totally and agreed to whatever the guru told him. So this is a message that we get from this story. He not only saves the life of his disciple, but also rids the kingdom of the foolish king and his silly minister. In addition, he becomes the next king and his disciple the next minister. So the entire kingdom was saved by this wise guru and his decisions. And the kingdom got rid of this foolish king and the foolish minister. So we'll go through the value points, the important things, children, you need to remember in this story. In the kingdom of fools, both the king and the minister were foolish. Okay, things were everything that happened in this kingdom were something very different from the other kingdoms. They ordered people to work at night and sleep during the day. It was something very reverse of what used to take place in the other kingdoms. So people worked during the night and slept during the days. Even the animals were trained accordingly. Once a guru and his disciple came to his kingdom during the day and found everything totally deserted. There was nothing around the place. People were invisible. Nobody was in sight because it was daytime. Everybody was fast asleep. Here, a measure of rice or a bunch of bananas, everything just cost a single duddu. So it was cheap. Anything you purchase was costing only a single duddu. So there was no economic stability in that particular kingdom. But the disciple found the food to be very cheap and so decided to stay on. The guru, however, decided to leave the city as he felt it was not safe. Okay, because the disciple was very fond of food, he found that this place was very suitable because everything was available at a very cheap cost. The cost was very low. So he decided to continue to stay, but the guru decided to leave. The disciple grew very fat by eating the food available in the city. One day, a thief broke into the house of a rich merchant by breaking the wall. But as he was leaving with the stolen stuff, the old wall fell on him and killed him. Now this thief was killed because the wall had fallen on him. It was an old wall. So it fell on him and killed him on the spot. The thief's brother complained before the king that the merchant was responsible for the thief's death, so he should be punished. Now the thief's brother had reached the spot and he took this complaint to the king, stating that the person living in that house, the merchant, was responsible for his brother's death as he had built a very weak wall. Now this merchant blamed the bricklayer who built the weak wall. Okay, so now the blame game had begun. Okay, the merchant now said that it was not he who had built it, it was the bricklayer who had built the weak wall. And this bricklayer blamed the dancing girl who had distracted him. So the bricklayer here said that this dancing girl used to move up and down the street and had distracted him. That is the reason the wall was not strong enough. It was very weak. The dancing girl blamed the goldsmith. Okay, so the dancing girl here blamed the goldsmith, stating that she had given some gold for him to make some jewelry, but he wasn't giving it to her, and that was the reason that she was moving up and down the street. The goldsmith blamed the merchant's father and the blame finally came back on the merchant. So now this goldsmith, he blamed that merchant's father, who had ordered for some gold, and he was desperately asking him to complete the work immediately, as there was some marriage in the family. So this goldsmith was busy completing that order, and he could not complete the girl's order. So finally the blame came back on the merchant. So the king had finally asked the merchant to be executed. So now when the merchant said that his father was actually the person who had ordered for this gold, he did not agree. The king replied that somebody had to die. So he ordered that the merchant had to be executed. The merchant was, however, too thin for the stake. So the search for the fat man began. So the stake made was very thin. So they had to search for a fat man. The disciple who had become fat, eating all the food, was selected. Then the disciple wished he had listened to the Guru and wished the Guru was there. So now when the disciple was caught, he remembered his Guru's words that he should have left the city because it was a kingdom of fools. When the king asked them, as the Guru had magical powers, he appeared at once and quietly exclaimed or explained the escape plan to the disciple. Now, the Guru had magical powers, so he at once understood what the situation was and immediately rushed to the disciple's help. The Guru and the disciple now started fighting amongst themselves to decide who would be executed first. So now they started fighting. They had this plan wherein they were fighting with each other that they should be executed first. When the king asked them why they were fighting, the Guru explained whoever was executed first on the new stake would be reborn as the king. So he explained to the king that whoever died on that stake first would be reborn as the king because it was a very magical stake. Okay. So the king freed both and decided to execute himself first so that he will be reborn as the king. So on that particular day, the execution did not take place. At night, the king freed the disciple and the Guru, and he and his minister himself dressed as the Guru and the disciple and decided to get executed so that they are reborn as the king and the minister. So see how foolish they were. After the execution, the people requested the Guru to become the king and the disciple the minister. Okay, so now after all these events took place, the foolish king and his minister had died. The people of that kingdom requested that the Guru should take up the kingdom, take care and become the king and the disciple the minister. They agreed on the condition that they would change all the laws back to normal like any other kingdom. So they put forth a condition that they would change everything like any other place. People would start working during the day and sleep at night. So most of the laws had to be changed. So this was the condition put forth by the Guru and his disciple. So finally everything came to an end. They were happy. The kingdom of fools had changed and it was brought to normal by the wisdom of the Guru and his disciples. So children, we understand that if we are in between fools, we need to be very tactful and deal with them with wisdom. Think appropriately and act accordingly. So this is the story. This is the lesson we get from this particular story. So read the lesson carefully Questions can come from any part of the lesson. I hope you've understood. Go through the lesson again. Thank you so much.